Okay, Mr. Jaboyko, I'm going to start the countdown.
Sure.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the live video podcast for people who want a deeper conversation about the films we're watching today. Let's get started here. All right, folks. We've got a banger of a show. We've got, of course, we're going to be talking about the Aliens franchise. Jim and I just recently saw, of course, Aliens Romulus, but we're going to try and bundle it into a conversation, a larger conversation about it all. Of course, there's a couple others, a couple of announcements, some housekeeping, and we're going to slip in a bonus see it or skip it. But first, I think it's time to bring on my co-host with the most, my borscht bro, the hero of the St. Boniface Ukrainian community, my friend, my compadre, my co-host with the most, Mr. Jim Chaboyko. How are you doing, my friend?
Good. I never know how to react to gratitude. It's good. It's good. Good to be back.
It is good to be back, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Just
definitely.
Just fun to it's been months.
Yeah.
And then I put out a couple of videos, I think, after our last live stream, but it has been months. Of course, I was fortunate enough to get a bit of a warm-up. Our good friend, who's also in the chat, our good friend, Dragon Movie Guy, brought me onto his live stream, Jim, and it was like, getting all the cobwebs out and just dusting everything off. I mean, I've been working the mic, doing a lot of voiceover lately, but it's a little different doing a live stream. Jim, what about you?
Oh, just spent the summer working a lot. Took a driving tour, a little less sort of ambitious than last summer, but I actually caught up on some older movies. So I've been doing no order, no theme, just some stuff off Tubi, including The Wild Geese, which you we should would be fun to analyze. Things like Taking Pelham 1, 2, 3 and that kind of thing. But yeah, and I've caught up with a good chunk of the current box office. Haven't seen Inside Out 2 yet, but that's definitely on the list. But yeah, just gradually getting the sun, trying to get away from the screens a little bit, and yeah, just enjoying myself. So
you'd mentioned, Jim, that somebody had passed.
That's definitely, today we lost James Earl Jones, classic actor. He was one of those guys, when Martin Mull passed away a couple months back. He was like one of those guys that I knew who he was when I was like 8, because I was a movie watcher even back then, and I may have been introduced to him through Roots, I want to say. But if you look back, it sort of dates me a little bit. But if you look at his filmography, holy crackers, just all kinds of stuff, and that great voice. And of course, he was the voice of Darth Vader, which every kid knew. It was sad news today anyway. But what a classic, actor, personality. He was into theater, movies, all kinds of stuff. And
he was also someone who, here, let me pull this up, was an EGOT winner, an Emmy, a Grammy, Oscar, and Tony. Because if memory serves, Jim, his past was deep in theater, in New York theater, big time theater, the legitimate stage.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because he had sort of that I don't want to say mid-Atlantic accent, because that makes me think of Winchester from MASH, but he didn't sound like he was from Mississippi. I imagine he did at one point in his life, but born in Mississippi, passed away a few hundred miles away from Broadway. So great life, and makes me want to watch some of his stuff. I mean, he was like in Dr. Strangelove and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it makes me want to go back.
Huge. Well, on that, I can't say it's an announcement, Jim. Perhaps a bit of a confession. It's good DMG is here in the chat. I had a great time on his show. But there was a moment, because we were talking about movies, what we're excited about seeing come this fall. Of course, because he lives in the hot desert of Nevada, fall ends at Christmas, apparently.
Yes.
Of course, I was like, well, it's come November 1st, I'm getting ready for winter.
Yeah.
But one of course, a big movie that's coming up that I have zero interest in seeing, and DMG doesn't have a lot either, was Beetlejuice 2, Beetlejuice. Although I agree with one wag on Threads going, how did he put Beetlejuices or something? Or
Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuiced. I don't know. I can't remember. It was funny. I'm sorry, Jim. I'm up the joke. Anyway, one of DMG's chatters came in and editorialized on how old Winona Ryder looked in the trailer. And I was like, I kind of pushed back a little, but, I just, at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like, I can't believe I'm hearing this. And I'm sure DMG is like, he wasn't, the chatter wasn't horrific or anything, but it was one of those things where you're like, afterwards, like days afterwards, I'm like, I feel a little ashamed. We both kind of pushed back a little. It was like kind of, that uncomfortable laughter, but I felt like a bit of a schmuck. And at the same time, I'm admitting it on Threads. And then it's like, I have this moment, Jim, I swear to God, where I'm like, that son of a is out there right now, probably still whining about how women aren't aging to his satisfaction. And that is the moment where I'm like, oh, son of a that's the clapback.
Mhm.
And now I'm just pissed that I didn't have that great comeback,
Yeah.
that solid clapback.
That 3 in the morning, like, oh, zing, yeah.
There's always days later that you're like,
Yeah.
and you are, because you're still wound up about it, because it's still rolling around in your head.
Yep.
And there we are. So that was something. I do have another thing before we get into the show, before we get into the subject of this show, which is, of course, the Aliens franchise. I did want to share with you a different filmmaking experience I had. I recently saw Rebel Ridge, made for Netflix. And I got to tell you, Jim, you know what? I was a little interested from the trailer, but at the same time, I'm also like kind of, what's this competent man, male power fantasy?
Mhm.
You know, is this going to be, is this going to be some power fantasy shit? I watch it. 2 hours later, I'm like, God damn, that was not.
Well,
That subverted my expectations in a pleasant way.
yeah.
Here's the log line. An ex-Marine grapples his way through a web of small-town corruption when an attempt to post bail for his cousin escalates into a violent standoff with the local police chief. And that's the Netflix log line, which is a solid log line. I'm like, oh, it's just everything's coming up, Rob.
Yeah.
It's most folks will probably think Jack Reacher and Spencer Confidential. Those are more recent of this kind of thing. Ex-military
Mhm.
guy, dealing with, righting a wrong, small town corruption. That said, it's got some First Blood in there. Even old-timey, do you remember Walking Tall? Buford
yeah.
Pusser, that 70s kind of idea of
Mhm.
small town corruption. Even, Billy Jack?
Yeah.
Guy always wore
yeah.
black with the cool hat.
And he's like, was he Aboriginal or
I
First
think
Nations
so.
or something to
Yeah,
that
white
effect?
and like he had, there's a mix of Métis
Yeah.
aspect to him, although American, so not really Métis. Had some kung fu moves, karate,
Yeah.
something. But it's definitely its own thing. And it's interesting, Jim. Have you had a chance to see it?
I haven't, no. I think it just came out last weekend, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not yet.
So
It's on the list though.
one of the things I would recommend when you watch it is think about vengeance versus justice, or maybe they're both, but I think that's one of the bigger. It's not the main theme, not the emotional thing of the movie, but it is one of the themes, one of the bigger themes it explores. As far as I'm concerned, here's my see it or skip it. See it. It's really it's more than competently made. It's very well made, and at times I honestly was like, well, that's not Netflix middle key. The filmmaker, what is his name again?
Jeremy Saulnier.
Saulnier. Yeah.
Yeah.
He is a cinematographer as well. And
Wow.
I'm about to belch. 1 second. No belch coming.
Uh-oh.
It'll come
Freaked
when
out.
it's embarrassing. Anyway, he is also a cinematographer, not a rookie, but how did I put this in my notes here? Right. It is well made. At times, I thought of John Frankenheimer and Ronin in some of the ways he had the camera moving. I thought this is a guy who's not afraid of the dark. And it subverts expectations at almost every level. It still is a competent man, an ex-military guy with, you know, skills, a certain set of skills. But it's not just that he's black, he's young. This is so many of these power fantasies are, I mean, aimed firmly at you and I in our 40s, old white guy just realizing in our 40s. Aren't I giving myself a compliment?
Woo, I'm back, baby.
I am the same age as Winona Ryder, and I would be ecstatic if I looked that good. But it goes further. It's not just that it's a young black man. At every stage, you really are, you know, going, what am I actually watching here? To its best effect. It also, Jim, for me, it explores themes I'm interested in. The poor in the justice system, that sleazy civil forfeiture scam that you see in the United States. What else? What else did I have here? Like, it's just a lot of cool crap going on there.
Mm-hmm.
What is courage? That vengeance versus justice. You know, at what point are you in a pissing contest versus being a coward? You know, and so yeah, I strongly recommend it. And for me, just to answer the question that I'm putting out there, I do think that vengeance and justice do not overlap. Like, there might be a little tension in the middle, but mostly let's say it's a continuum. And if you got, whoopsie, hey, people can like and subscribe though. If you've got vengeance over here and then you have justice over here, and the farther you move away towards revenge, the farther away you're getting from justice, you know? And yeah, I think some people think vengeance is justice. Mm-hmm. I don't think it is. And I think this film poses that question and answers it in a creative and satisfying way. So there you go, folks.
2 comments.
Absolutely. But yeah, my recommend is see Rebel Ridge on Netflix now. Jim, sure. Comments.
2 comments. Number 1, Black Reacher. Number 2, that guy who criticized Winona Ryder, those guys are always the same. And you know what? If he was at a dinner for 2 across the table from her at say a really nice restaurant, he would be a puddle. Guaranteed. They always come out with these statements. They always say like, she's got this or that, or her head's too big, or, you know, whatever dumb comment. She looks old to be. As soon as you get them in the same room, they would be knocked on their ass instantly. And I that's every time I think, when I hear some complaint like that. Exactly. Oh yeah.
If they could, yeah. No, that's a great comment. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I don't think the man's out there doing evil.
No,
you know, and and he wasn't like. You know, some where it's like, okay, you're a terrible person. I don't think he is. I think it's just but it was a terrible take. Yeah. And I felt like a schmuck for not, you know, pushing back a bit more.
And, you know, with the opposite of that is, they've had too much work done. You know, you just see these women probably, you can't win. So
women can't catch a break. No, it's not that they can't catch a break. We refuse to give them one. Mm-hmm. You know, and like I said, Jim, she is exactly my age. I would be ecstatic if I looked that good.
Yeah.
You know. All right. Speaking of looking that good, let's take a quick look at the chat before we actually get the show started. We've only been going on for 20 minutes. We did start not just on time, but we started early. I think, folks, I think you should, we should get a like and a subscribe just for that.
We got a few old friends here too.
Oh, Jelly Duck.
Uh-huh.
Wait a second.
Nice.
Jelly Duck!
Oh yeah, all the effects.
Great to see you here, Jelly Duck. DMG,
Jelly Duck.
of course. A few GMG busy in the chat. Jelly Duck does good. No, just Beetlejuice.
Mr. Brockup's here too.
Oh, Cody's here. There he is.
Yes. Hello, sir.
We have risen.
Yeah. That's very Halloween comment.
And Jelly Duck, you're absolutely right. It's interesting that Winona Ryder comes up because she was in Alien Resurrection. If memory serves, she was the robot in that one. I think she was ended up. We find out she's an android, not
That's
Andy the android, which Alien Romulus. It's Andy the android. It's like, oh.
I thought of that when I was describing it to my family the other day. And an android whose name is Andy. Wait a sec.
This is what I was typing. I was doing my little breakdown. Yeah. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right. And that is actually exactly our cue. Let's first of all, Jim, we are talking about Alien Romulus. Here is the log line. While scavenging the deep ends, I'm telling you that's what it said, ends, not end. The deep ends of a derelict space station, a group of young space colonists come face to face with the most terrifying life form in
the universe.
Yeah, folks, it's basically, in a way, sort of a mix of your typical, stocked with very attractive young adults going on a heist. There's a monster in the house. There's your movie, except it's an aliens universe, and the house is a space station, and it's a xenomorph. Of course, more will come up. Jim, first of all, for me, it is, I'm giving this a see it, a solid see it. I'll have other things to say about it, but what say you? See it or skip it?
I'd say it's a mid see it. I don't know that it does tons new with the alien backstory, but go ahead.
So, Jim, see it or skip it?
See it.
All right. Well, now that we've got that out in a portion I can edit, sure. I will now ask you, give us your spoiler-free review.
Okay, here's the spoiler. So just a few sentences there. Yeah, I was just going to say that it doesn't really add tons to the alien part. There's a little bit at the end there. But what I liked was the two characters that we start off with, the two main characters, Andy and Rain. And I thought their story, one reviewer said, oh, it's horribly boring. I thought that was the most promising part of the movie, and they're great. And David Johnson as Andy is fantastic. He's got to do, it's a tricky role. He's just great.
Yeah, I'm saying solid. Not that this is a great movie. It is slightly above average. I still enjoyed it. It was still a decent night at the movies. Yeah. It does have, and I will put a link to this in a pinned comment, Brandon McNulty has a great writing channel, but he usually uses movies to explain his points about plotting and storytelling. He uses this movie as a great example of bonus ending, and that bonus is not a good bonus. I think I've already alluded to one of the things I do think that holds this back from being a great movie. Yeah, it is like so many other young adult horror films. That's what it is. They could have, without putting it into aliens, they could have just made this movie and you would have been, this is any other horror film. the other thing I think is you're absolutely right. Jim, you and I both, after the movie, we talked about the relationship between Rain and Andy, kind of surrogate brother and sister. Yes, one's a robot and the other is not. She's a human being, played by Kaylee Spaney. And more of that would have just been better.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I would have watched the two of them together for a couple hours.
And I think, and we're going to talk about this more in the film when we get into the spoiler zone. But honestly, Jim, idiot plot moments and idiot characters so the quote Brendan McNulty again, so the plot can plot. And I think while it was fun to see it now, it'll be fun the first time. Like so many other films, you will start to remember those things. As the positive experience kind of fades a bit, thing they will stick out. And you'll go, wait a sec, that was kind of, yeah, exactly. Because, well, and I'll elaborate on that more later. So, folks, that is what we're talking about. It's not just Alien Romulus. It is about the whole Megillah, not including the crossovers, although you can chime in on that. We're talking about the whole franchise, and in a way discussing this to talk about franchises in general. What's the deal with them? Are they a good thing, a bad thing? Are there good things about franchises? What bad things are there about these so-called franchises? Does one outweigh the other? On that note, I will once again beg you all for a like, a subscribe, and if you wouldn't mind, ringy ding that bell.
I've misplaced my. Oh, here it is.
Oh. Well, little delay on the. This won't be the first time you've seen something on YouTube where sound and action is a little out of sync. All right, with that out of the way, let's talk about. Let's get into. Where's my gimmick? Jim, I need a gimmick.
Probably not.
Let's get in
to the spoiler zone.
There we go.
All right. Here, I'm going to start with one. I put it out on Threads. You were kind enough to chime in, Mr. Jaboyko, but I will repeat myself here. I have many negative things I can say about film franchises, which is probably giving everyone a hint on how I actually feel about these things. That said, one of the positive things I think about a film franchise, and this is something Curtis Judd, a guest on our show, a friend of our channel, brought up when we were talking about Star Wars. And he said, the thing about the 7th Star Wars, The Force Awakens, it was his daughter's opportunity to participate in the franchise, that they got a Star Wars for themselves. And I was like, that's an interesting note. That's a good note. And I got to admit, I never thought of it that way. I love to brag about how I got to see the original Star Wars in the theater when it came out when I was 10. Ha ha. So I never thought that the later movies could be, be more inclusive. I didn't think of it that way. What about you? What is one of the things you had? I think you chimed in, said Star Trek. And I was like, well, I know that is a franchise. What's your point? On Threads.
Yeah, I mean,
what about you?
That it's gone through the ages with every new, ideally with every new Star Trek movie that'll inspire the viewer to go back if they haven't and check out the original ones and, go all the way back. My wife is a big Star Trek fan, and so she does she have encyclopedic knowledge? Probably pretty close, and she knows it from stem to stern. But you talk to if you've worked with anybody who's maybe a few years younger than you, they don't have the same viewing experience. So I think movies can be very, especially movies, not necessarily books, but movies can be really tied in very closely to the age you were when you saw them.
Yeah.
We look back, and because Star Wars came out in our formative years, and I can still remember being at the drive-in and hearing the sound of the lightsaber, and instantly that lightsaber sound takes me back. And not so much like we talking about Beetlejuice this weekend. I was never a Beetlejuice guy because I was, however, years old. I wasn't a teenager anymore.
I remember seeing it and it
Yeah.
being a big hit. But by then you're like kind of, oh, that was a good movie. Not necessarily an experience that formed my idea of movies.
Yeah, and I think that's when you see something at a certain age, like when you see Jaws young, perhaps a little too young, because they showed on CTV on the Sunday night CTV movie, and with commercials, it's still terrifying, but still great. I think when it hits you at a certain time, there's an evocativeness. There's sort of like, it's like a little serum that gets inserted into you that maybe when you're a cynical late teen or even in your 20s, it may not have that same effect. So when you're taking a look at a franchise, and a franchise typically something that happens, especially with movies, over time, we're talking about 30, 40, years at this point. Every generation probably has their own entry point. When you see something new, it might excite you to look back at the past. And I think that's one of the sort of the neat things about that, is that you can go back and watch, young Mark Hamill, who's now in his 60s, as a fresh new Hollywood face, coming out, whining about water evaporators and that kind of thing.
That's a great note, and makes me think of historical films as well. But that's not for this show. All right, quick look at the chat here, folks. Romulus, like Harvey Weinstein in casting actresses. Well executed, creepy as all get out, and you're rooting for the white brunette woman to run. I don't know. Like so many horror films, and actually for you aficionados of horror films, and for you, Jim, maybe that's something else we can chat about here. It's funny. I was thinking about franchises, and while I think one of the core things about Aliens is the woman as lead, and kind of a spin on the final girl, but it's still a woman as lead. It's still a woman as the final girl. I'm also wondering, unlike the early Aliens, I mean, they just kept on reinventing Ripley, right? It's like, oh, she's frozen. Oh, she's frozen again. Oh, they've cloned her multiple times. But what was really the common denominator here is the monster. So whether you're looking at this or, let's say, Friday the 13th or, all these other horror franchises, series, that's the key thing. That is the common denominator. It isn't the lead character. They are a type, but the alien's the alien. You got to have a facehugger. You got to have a xenomorph, period. They can change a little, but not too much. What do you, anything else on the positive side? What are you thinking about?
It sort of predicates on whether or not you can keep it going, if it's a genuine kind of effort to make the franchise. If it's a natural kind of a thing. You
Yeah.
know, a lot of times, especially, and I know we're not talking about TV here, but I sort of watch TV.
Yeah.
And
no, bring it up, because I think these things the best ones resemble good television.
Yeah. So, you know, my wife and I often talk about this when a TV series wraps up. You might see some criticism after just from the fan zone, basically. Oh, that was unsatisfying to me. Oh, that wasn't a great ending, blah, blah, blah. I don't know that television with it, especially the old style with the 22 episodes a season for X amount of seasons. I don't know if that was the most natural way to tell a story, necessarily. Even the HBO model, which is maybe 7 seasons of 10 to 12 episodes each, that can be, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And then, a lot of times they, like ER or The Office, the main character leaves and then they continue. So you sort of think, well, what's the point? A lot of times it's a business decision, and it's motivated by the money that the thing makes, and this sort of little creation with all the tech and all the crew and all the cast and keeping that together.
I get that, but that isn't a good reason or a bad reason. It's just, that's the capitalism. Like when we think about, let's say this Alien Romulus, we're getting another one because they're just making too much money.
I think it's close to 100 million, not quite 100 million, but it's almost there.
It might even be. Well, let's take
97.
a look.
I have
Jim,
Dan Merle today.
I have a device.
But yeah, so what I'm basically trying to say is that it sometimes is a business decision rather than a story decision. And when it's a business decision, I think the viewers, I think that takes advantage of them. So that's not a great thing in my mind.
What? Okay, so, but is that something unique to franchises? By the by, Aliens Romulus has grossed 97.2 in the domestic market, 217 million.
Oh yes, okay.
Internationally for a worldwide total of
300 million.
314.4 million.
Mm-hmm.
It's Jim.
Big in China.
They're going to manage to make a couple of bucks.
Yeah.
Especially Kaylee Spaney. Sorry, I keep saying Spiney. It's Spaney. Kaylee Spaney, going to be the most expensive talent here. She ain't commanding $50 million.
Mm-hmm.
So on a budget of 80 million, it's all gravy now. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of Hollywood executives saying, maybe they can make me an even taller mast on my yacht. Mine won't sink like that corporate schmuck did. I'll be fine.
David Zaslav, can you make this popped color gold? I don't know if it's the same company. Don't fact check that. Who do we have in the cast? Oh, a Romanian basketball player, some guy from Rada, and a bunch of the chick who played Dora.
It is Disney. It's 20th century. It's Disney.
Yeah, okay.
We can see you can see everyone, at least here in Canada, on Disney Plus.
Yes.
All right. Where was I? Oh, let's talk about television. I don't think it works with this franchise, but I think there are. The skip intro guy, he put it once, it's like, listen, the MCU's television, I'll fight you all for it. And he's right. I think that's why it worked for 20 films. It really was great episodic television with a long series arc, and of course, given the capitalist mode of production, they're like, we've invested in that brand. We're going to keep squeezing money out of it until we just can't squeeze any harder and we can't get another nickel more. But that up to Infinity War, it was pretty entertaining, long form, go to the theater television.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a possibility. You know, what do you think? Am I wrong? What are your thoughts
That
on that, Mr.
well,
DeBoyko?
to phrase it in the form of a question, is that a viable way to tell a story until they sort of lost the plot a little bit? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not a viable one. Is that a good thing or a good use of the franchise model, let's say? Like, you know, I'm trying to tease out hey, do we need more of these, less of these? Is there a right size and style for a franchise? I can't remember who it was. It was maybe like Stories of Old. Another commentator talked about how he doesn't like, what was it? Oh, the Rings of Power.
Okay.
His argument is that Lord of the Rings worked as a film trilogy because it was epic. And when I say romantic in an old-timey way.
Yeah.
Epic and romantic in scope. And it's got a definite end. And it was really well built for film. But to look at it as a TV series, that doesn't work. Whereas, and then he talks about Game of Thrones, and, you know, everything can lose the plot. Not in a Brandon McNulty way, but lose it. How did he, was talking about Game of Thrones, and because of the nature of that, more human level stories, more human level quirks and character development, and it can be episodic in nature. Game of Thrones works really well on television. And I think the MCU kind of figured out how to do that in basically 2-hour chunks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that model is sustainable. It was certainly unique and super ambitious. Like when I remember hearing about the original Avengers movies and just seeing all the cast and thinking all those egos together in the same room, I thought it was going to be a disaster, and I was totally wrong. It was very enjoyable, and it felt like a coherent effort. But
Jim Shashank is in the house.
oh my gosh! Holy cow!
Let's give him. Great to see you, Shashank.
Hello.
Sorry, I interrupted. My bad.
No. I should finish this off before I lose my own plot. But yeah, I don't. There were so many comments from from whatever movie Twitter or the intelligentsia or film community that that the whole Marvel thing has sort of overtaken a lot of movies or taken away opportunities for other things. So I don't know how much space, these things are all finite, how much space there is for a similar model, but it was certainly unique and it was certainly ambitious.
Yeah.
And for a long period, it was pretty consistently entertaining.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, you're absolutely, maybe thinking out loud, maybe, Jim, it was never going to be like, it was a great one-off. Of course, James Gunn is going to try and recreate that for the new DC. Oh, excuse me, terrible batch. For the new DC, will that work out? We'll find out. But that does make me, and I got to DMG. Here's a zinger. Let's get that rim shot ready. DMG, Avengers Endgame, from the guys who killed off Chevy Chase on Community.
That was a feat. Speaking of Community,
Jim,
really
wait
quick.
a sec. Wait.
Oh.
I want to say it's like Chevy Chase deserved whatever fate he got on Community.
Absolutely.
Go, Jim.
I found it on Twitter today. There's a 3-year joke built in Community about Beetlejuice. Try and figure out. You might just look up on Twitter. But I sent you that tweet earlier, Rob. I saw it and I was just like, oh my God, I can't. The show gets more awesome every time, every year that passes. But anyway, 6 seasons and a movie.
I've been spending more time on Threads
Yeah.
And
There was a long game Beetlejuice joke built into the entire series, which took 3 years to tell.
damn.
Yeah. So
there is a show that really knew its film history, its pop culture history.
Yeah.
You know, it just some great writing there. All right, let's get back to this. And what do you think? We've kind of talked about some of the potential good of a film franchise. Let's go on to the other side. And maybe I'll start us off with this one. And I'm going to use Romulus as an example, which is perhaps a little unfair, but you know what? And folks, just to remind you all, we are in
The spoiler zone.
Okay, where was it? Ah, yes, Alien Romulus. And this doesn't change this does not in any way change my see it recommendation, folks. That said, I think in a few years, much like people who, there was a woman on Threads talking about how she doesn't know what people are complaining about Prometheus. She enjoyed it. And I'm like, yeah, you can. But these things do not wear well over time. And I think Romulus is a great example of a franchise that is too loaded up. You and I talked about this before. I haven't figured out quite how to put it in a short, but here is my thing. A film franchise is much like the traveler taking too much crap with them. They got too much baggage. They are in the airport. They don't just have a big piece of checked baggage. It's overweight, so they got to deal with that at the gate. And they got a pair of skis or maybe a bicycle, whatever. It's like, oh, well, we can take care of this here, but you're going to have to go over there. Did you fill out the right form? Because you're going to need a form for that. And then you go take it into the oversized baggage thing. And even there, they might be, oh, well, we're going to have to get Bill out. Then you're going to go through security. And you're going to have too much crap in there. You're going to be throwing stuff out. You're going to get through. Then you get to your other destination. And you're like, you got to wait. And you're not going to get out first. Your stuff is, again, it's like, oh, yeah, we got to special handle that. We'll eventually get it. And maybe some of it gets lost. And then you're at your destination. You're still hauling all this crap around. That is a film franchise. Mm-hmm. So many, every film has genre expectations, and you can play with those, but a film franchise doesn't have just genre expectations, it has franchise expectations. And you don't get to play with those. Look at the grief Rian Johnson had to put up with in the 8th Star Wars movie. And I'm not saying it was a great flick, but it was a swing. It was an attempt to kind of break free of those franchise shackles. But no, it's all this stuff that you have to take with you. You can't just leave the skis behind. The bicycle's coming. No, you better save that box you brought it in. Like everything just loads it up and loads it down. And so one of the things that this movie will suffer from in later viewings, I'm talking about Romulus, is it's not just the ending. It's not just the beginning. There are characters they basically just reboot. There are things that happen here where you're like, oh, that's an homage, a shout out, an Easter egg to previous things. But it's like, yeah, that's not a feature. It may be a feature of franchise storytelling, but I would argue that's a bug for good storytelling. That you're just trapped in that. You can't do much different. So the best you can do, if the first or maybe the second one, because there they get to still kind of establish some new rules, push the boundaries. If they do that, you know what? That is, you will never get that good. You're forever limited. And the more movies come out, the more it limits you in a franchise like Aliens. I think James Bond, although I got to admit, I'm like, I have no use for that either. James Bond, like things that are really centered around the character, where you're just forever creating new ways of the character pick up women and kill bad guys and cool gadgets. That is a little different. I think superhero stuff is a little different. You know, Batman's been around how long, you know? But I think that is the one of the big downsides of a film franchise. And that's not just for I'm kind of describing it from the filmmaker's end, but I actually think that's really affects us, the viewers. Because in the end, after a while, you're like, seen it. Oh, that's that, that's that. You know, you come out, maybe it was satisfying for an evening, but you're not, it's almost like forever chasing a first high. And it's never, you aren't going to get that.
Yeah.
You know, what do you think? What's one of the downsides to you on these big franchises?
Yeah, I just think, you know, it's that sort of, put simply, just the running out of steam. I mean, I think stories usually start and they come from a place of good faith. And, you know, if you're making money off it, that's great. I mean, that's sort of the point of Hollywood. But as it continues, you know, you're more likely to tack on and tack on and tack on. And how many Rockies are there? And another Die Hard, and, you know, all these kinds of things. And you know, clearly, take a look at Rocky, for instance. You know, the guys starts off small and low key, and it certainly doesn't end that way. Yeah. So I just think, I think that you lose yourself in the success. You have the ability to, and it's very, very, you know, do you need that many movies to tell a story? Number one. I don't know. 3 is a good number. There's not too many sevenths or eighths that I appreciate.
There isn't, are there?
No. Again, Avenger, the whole sort of MCU thing is a different beast entirely. But yeah, do you need a 1,200-page book aside from Lord of the Rings? You know, it's often, you know, yeah. I just think the chance of something running out of steam is too great, and then just losing itself. You know, losing its initial verve, which is what brought you to it in the first place. Yeah. Right?
No, that makes sense to me. Is there? And this is where, like, coming back to this one, I have a hard time imagining this film, Jim. Like, one of the things both you and I agreed on is the relationship between Andy and Rain was fire. It was just awesome. And that I would have loved to, you're going to put the whole movie just around them. And I would have been at least excited. It may have still gone off the rails, but I don't think you could have within an Aliens context. You need a shrinking crew. You know?
Shrinking. Yeah.
Some people, sorry, but it's a horror movie. Some people got to die.
Yeah.
You know,
you got to kill your darlings, even if they're like Bjorn, the obnoxious Cockney. How do you end up with a name like Bjorn anyway? But yeah.
Yeah. And that's okay. This is more just me complaining about this film in particular. You got its idiot character. So the plot can plot, you know, it is a demand on the on the filmmakers, on the storytellers to figure out a way to get them into ever-increasing peril in a way that we find satisfying. And just, it just seems to me, Jim, so lazy to just go, we'll make X a bastard. We won't even explain it, or we'll give it the lamest explanation. Oh, an android and they're programmed to let some die to protect everyone else. That's your reason? I'm like, I gotta admit, I'd be like, no, I get why you locked my mom in the gas thing in this, in this prison or in this mining colony that literally has canaries.
Yes, yeah.
And of course, it's like, I don't know about you, Jim, but I'm like, wow, you got all these amazing physically adept robots. Why aren't they just doing the mining?
Yeah.
Because
then it'd be Blade Runner, Rob.
And
Ooh,
a relationship crossover. Well, but one of the themes I thought this movie had, it only touched on in earlier ones, but this one kind of brings it to the fore, was this, okay, what is humanity? What is family?
Yeah.
And the relationship between Rain and her programmed brother, Andy, who's, let's say, developmentally stunted because of let's say a brain injury, a robot that's not working right, and she's going to fix him. Not sure how folks in the, let's say, the disabled community will take that one, but it is one of the things. And I don't think you can explore that if you've got, like, in a group of just attractive young people plotting their way through a haunted house.
Yeah.
How about this, Jim? Another thing that I find almost depressing about film franchises is even the talk about them, and we're using the term too, the franchise, which is such a variety speak, business speak. And it's like, no, these are supposed to be stories moving us, getting us to talk about deeper issues, experiencing emotions and our humanity, via a remarkable piece of art. And we talk about it like, well, is this good for the franchise? I'm like, why the should I care about the survivability, the sustainability about the franchise? That's 20th century's problem. That's Disney's problem. That's not my problem. I don't owe shit to these folks. I don't owe shit to the franchise. I think the talk about it, that forever, it's like, boy, folks, I appreciate, we all like to kind of know what we're seeing before we see it. And as film becomes, as movies at the theater become more and more expensive, I get it. Like, you want to, this is a backhanded positive, a backhanded compliment to franchises. They give you some of that assurance that you'll at least have a middling time. But wow, like I think the trade-off for even in the best hands with the best people, you get either mediocrities or, worse than that, Romulus, in a weird way, what could have been a perfectly fine movie, but damn, it's like, fire with those two. There's a theme you could have really explored, but nope. Plot's got a plot, and aliens got to be aliens. We got to spend time in creative kills of these chumps who behaving badly, also behaving badly, because that's another thing, a horror standard that is really involved in this movie, and really all of the sequels. Most of these people deserve to die. They screwed up in a certain way. They were selfish, or they were too smart. They're too clever. Whereas the first Aliens, you kind of get a vibe of, well, I don't know if you felt bad for everyone dying, even when they were being a schmuck, you know?
Yeah, Fed Kodo.
Right?
Yeah.
But even Gorman in Aliens, now mind you, they give him a redeeming death. I mean, but yeah, the most of the soldiers like,
yeah.
I don't even know where I'm going with that. Sorry.
No, well, you started off talking about, and then I forgot it, and then I remembered what I was going to say. But you started off talking about the use of the word franchise, and it's almost in a way, my there's a whole story about my mom that I don't. It's too long. I'll save it for another time. But basically, there's a whole industry out there to tell you what film is, which individual film is, when it's released, when it's coming out, how well it's doing, who's in it, the development of the net, that whole thing. And arguably we know too much about movies. And I'll tell you, kids, there used to be a time when you could turn on the TV, the television set, and after it warmed up, you could change the channel, like physically change the channel to the late show, and there'd be an old movie on, and you would have, aside from the little capsule description in the newspaper or in the TV guide, you'd have no idea what it was or where you were headed to. And I still remember, and I brought it up before on the show, seeing Sleuth the first time with, I believe it's Michael Caine and Laurence Olivier. And then after a half an hour realizing, holy crap, there's only two people in this film. I think there was a third at the very end, but and just being kind of like blown away by this. I think it was initially a play, but I didn't know as a kid. And a young movie watcher, I didn't know anything about it, and that was perfect. You just you're going in blind. It's sort of like watching foreign movies that you don't know anything about, right?
Yeah.
And so we kind of lack that experience, or if you pay attention to things like Twitter and YouTube and box office and things like that, we're rarely surprised by those things anymore.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a shame. And it's something you can't really do anything about. I used to go down, if I wanted to know more about a movie or a star or something like that, you used to have to go to the library. This is dating me even more than the Roots reference I made earlier.
Folks, back in the day,
in the
olden days,
before the Millennium Library was the Centennial Library, showing the lack of vision there. You used to go to the reference center and ask the reference librarian for the film books, and they would have film books for every year, and you'd go back and you'd read more about the film. That was the internet back then. Yeah. And it was kind of fun, actually. You had to do the homework, and you had to physically take the bus, the number 10 Saint Germain, all the way down to the library and check it out. So anyhow,
well, and all those annuals, like, hey, especially when VHS, like the video store boom, let's call it, and all of a sudden all these movies we could see. Now that said, I don't want to end this. I think there's a lot bad about that investment in the franchise. But it's mostly, I think, bad for the big studios. The returns will forever drop, right? Because they can't take any risks, so they got to keep going back to, and this has been since forever. Like, once films started making narrative stuff, it's like, well, let's what plays? Here's Hamlet, here's Macbeth, here's the latest play that's come out, here's that is just a forever thing, you know what I mean? So it's not like it's new. For decades upon decades, Westerns ruled the Hollywood roost.
Yeah.
That said, great films still came out, from the whole world. And we do live at a time where, notwithstanding all this dreck, this middling, it's a perfectly fine film, Jim, I can see great film anytime from the comfort of my own home.
Yeah.
And you and I have had the opportunity to see some of the best film of the last 5 years in the theater still.
Yeah.
And I'm still thinking about Poor Things, or, there's just so many great films. Even as I started at the beginning of the show, talking about that Rebel Ridge, where I'm like, yeah, that is not Netflix middle key. It's certainly shot for Netflix. It's got television and television watchers in mind, but it's a full-on movie. It's a real movie. At times, it doesn't even feel like television, and it's got all these great things that I think make for great storytelling. Meanwhile, episodic television, even on Netflix, you can see some amazing stuff. I mean, I can't believe I was so late to the party, but Maniac, I'm just like, I could watch that over and over and over. Chaos, it did not stick the landing. But still, a solid, interesting ideas and interesting storytelling. And yeah, so it's one of it's you get all doom and gloom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me just look at the chat one more time, Mr. Chaboyko, before I think we're moving into final thoughts here.
Yeah.
DMG. I'm not sure if I give him a rim shot or if I have to censor this before I put it in. It's a middling time. Somehow not the title of the Harvey Weinstein biopic. Zing. Wait, it gets better. Although it does involve face huggers. Wait a second here. I've got an effect for them.
That paints a picture. Thanks, DMG. That trombone.
DMG does add another note, and this is it's a great moment to end the full discussion before we kind of summarize and sort of give our verdict. But DMG says, law of diminishing returns. What was the joke in Back to the Future 2? Jaws 24? That was a good bit. But yeah, that idea of the law of diminishing returns. Sure returns, which, in a capitalist mode of production, that's what, just as plot's got a plot, capital's got to earn a return on investment. ROI is the watchword. Mm-hmm. And even for a young film director, yeah, you want to spend $100 million on a movie? You're going to be doing it in franchise land, and the studio is going to have its notes. All right, Jim, let's bear with me.
Final thoughts.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Chaboyko. Just to kind of summarize as best as I can. I mean, I think in the positive end of this, and we really did, I think we narrowed our conversation. We really didn't talk as much about talked a bit about superhero films, but mostly about these more series kind of things. Mm-hmm. And didn't really talk about or the more character-driven ones like James Bond, but within that, we did have some positives about the film franchise. One of the things you talked about is every new movie, specifically referring to Star Trek, is an invitation to go explore the other movies within that universe. Mm-hmm. I think the same thing could be said for, say, a Star Wars, but also it's an opportunity for, like you're talking about, you only have a certain age range where a movie can really own you. Another one, although no one talks about it because J.K. Rowling is such a crazy Harry Potter. You know, the idea of a movie hitting you at that perfect time
Yeah.
and all of a sudden it's like, this is my piece of this pop culture thing. And I think those are both great pluses of the modern movie franchise. Heck, moving into the character idea, like, let's say James Bond. Everyone has an idea of when they say James Bond, there may be a debate on who's better or whatever, but you'll always know the James Bond that you kind of imprinted on.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, on the downside, let's say, we certainly talked about law of diminishing returns, all this baggage. You can never really get that great thing. You're sort of trapped creatively, but for the audience, it's like, well, give me what I want. Why am I not satisfied? Why do I not remember this? Why do it when I remember it, I only think of the bad things, you know? And of course, yeah, it consumes up all the space at the multiplex, and it consumes all the talk in the places we talk about this kind of thing. I think that's, did I kind of capture what we talked about, good and bad? Does anything else you that I forgot there?
No, it sort of reminds me a little bit of that time that Bart Simpson had that catchphrase, what was it? I didn't do it or something like that. And then everyone loved it so much it became in demand, and they started to get tired of it. And then he went woozle wuzzle, and they went, what the hell is this? You know, and sort of that's
almost
sort of,
here in Capital City.
yeah, exactly. Sort of makes me think of that a little bit, but
well, I think, okay, so let's I'll give you I am more down on franchises. Notwithstanding the good things we talked about, you know what? As much as we love this idea of freezing everything in time, no, culture moves on. And so things should end. For culture to move on, things have to die. Just as characters have to die in horror movies, you can't have them all just get up on the stage like they used to back in Shakespeare's time. They all got to die eventually, except for that one or two chosen people. Franchises should die as well. Maybe even the idea of them, but at least the ones that have, like, geez, when you think of the crossovers, it's 10 movies. And it just, you know, there's some talk, you know, it's like, hey, maybe we can have you know, this kind of Predator can be brought into this timeline. Because this is, I swear to God, this is a word used in Wikipedia. They call this one an interquel. I know.
Oh my gosh, that's new. That's a new one.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like some made up shit. Because of course this movie fits between Alien and Aliens.
Oh yeah.
Do not think about it too much, because it will not make sense.
What if my life is an interquel? Does that make it better or worse? I don't know.
Well, it's like, yeah, that continuity dog won't hunt. And this is the tough thing about these things. I will say it again. It will not age well. You know what? We'll remember more of these things and less of the positives, because the positives weren't really that great. They were solid. Again, a nice night in the movies. That woman who enjoyed Prometheus, it's like, this wasn't bad. She had a nice time. That said, I maybe after this conversation and us talking about it, maybe I'm not as harsh on them, but things have to die. Let these things die, and let's get some new cool stuff from new cool directors and filmmakers and performers where we can really see what they can do. What about you? What's your verdict on all of this,
a couple
Mr.
of
Chaboyko?
back when we were playing with Star Wars toys and things like that, when we had our action figures and our setups, and they used to climb the Christmas tree and, feel forests of Andor or whatever the Christmas tree represented. You always thought, oh, I wish they would expand on this story, and it wasn't just comic books and novellas. And, there you go. Now there's 100,000 things with Star Wars on it, and you sort of wish that that universe would sort of collapse a little bit. Like they say, when they don't show the monster in a horror movie, it's your imagination that actually sort of fills in the blanks and can do a pretty respectable job. So that's one point I wanted to make. Wrote down a couple others. One of our summer viewing as a family, we would watch the new Ben Feldman show, Population 11, on Prime Video, and it's 10, 12 episodes or whatever.
I literally just heard of that today.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. It's fish out of water. He goes to very rural Australia. And when it ended, we thought, wouldn't it be nice? Am I freezing up? Sorry, wouldn't it be nice if that was it? That you didn't expand on that. You just had that 1 year and just leave it at that. Wouldn't that be a nice thing? The other thing that I've been watching Dan Merle, a rival YouTuber, but another YouTuber on film. And he talks about the box office, but he talks sort of about 2/3 of the way through the segment, because he does these 40-minute long sort of breakdowns. About 2/3 of the way through, he does, what are the original movies that are doing well this year? And there's not a lot of them. A lot of the movies that have success are already connected. They're a sequel, or they're connected in some other way to another film series. So there's like
a spin-off.
So Civil War, another Kaylee Spaney movie, which made 65 million, is like number 3, which isn't a lot of money.
No.
There's like If up there, the animated thing with Ryan Reynolds that I think is mostly on was released to streaming. Or was it? Anyway, there's a handful of them.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot, and they haven't made that much money.
Yeah.
So sequels and connected movies and IP and all the whole thing, that takes up a huge amount of cinema these days.
And we're only going to see more, because it's a much safer bet. Even a mediocre Aliens will still get more sales than Borderlands.
Or what was our movie about Emily the Criminal or something like that? You could probably make about
I'm talking
20
about
of those with But I mean, just in terms of original, sort of, not even necessarily independent.
Oh, that's true. But Borderland was based on IP. Oh, woof. God, I hate that reference.
Yeah. One sec. What?
Do you baby cat?
No. It's all right. Lost a cat. Anyway. So I think that's it takes up a large amount of the territory there. So what are we missing when we rely too much on sequels? I think,
and that's an interesting thing. This is another downside to the franchise model, but this is also bound up with a promotion system. The fact that they get so much money, they also get so much attention, they get so much star power. It sucks up all the conversation, all the wind. I saw it was on Threads. I think it was Threads. I miss cinema, a commenter. And it's just such a clickbaity.
Yeah.
It's shameless in its pretentious, oh, I miss Jim cinema. And so I chimed in, because I'm like, hey, listen, I did not tell this individual to go himself. But what I did, my comment was, well, what about? And I listed off like some amazing films we saw just in the last couple of years. Of course, Women Talking, Poor Things.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
Coda.
I just rattled this off. Coda. But no, like even more recently, damn it, The Zone of Interest.
Oh yeah,
You know, these are all that cinema.
Mhm.
And he's like, and I say, what about these? What about them? It's like, oh, you pretentious, you know. So much that's it, and that's I think a downside to the talk about franchises, even what we're doing now.
Mhm.
Goodness, it's like an Ouroboros of eating bullshit, but that it demands all the conversation, and all of a sudden, no one's even talking about these remarkable films that are out there.
Mhm.
You know, that
Yeah,
Rebel
and some-
Ridge is a solid flick that did not
some-
cost $100 million, is
No.
not a franchise, is not attached to anything, nothing. A star that is only at the beginning of his career. And here's another one where it's like, damn, I'm excited about seeing where he comes.
Mhm.
There's also Don Johnson is in it. Like, damn, Jim, it's a solid flick. Where is... Bear with me. I'm going to find, no. There we go. Where's our star, Mr. Chaboyko? Here we are. Okay, Jeremy Saulnier, but the star, Aaron Pierre, young
Oh, yes.
British man.
Yeah, English, yeah.
But Don Johnson is great in this flick. Like,
Yeah.
just, Jim, just solid AF.
Mhm.
Who else? Who else do we got here? Anna Sophia Robb in, you know, she's now becoming, she's a star in this flick, and you're sort of wondering, well, when are we going to see more of her, you know, helping the lead to be one of the main players? But a ton of great character actors. No one, you know, Don Johnson is the bad guy in that film, but he's never twirling. How do you put it? How do you like to put it? Twirling, mustache twirling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Damn. But no, here we are talking about aliens. So, you know, it could be that you and I are part of the problem. All right.
Yeah.
With that out of the way, let's first of all, let's okay, we got one more. DMG, this is good. The power of one, the power of two, the power of many. Wait just a sec. This deserves a megaphone.
The power of many franchises.
Good one, DMG. But he does. The studio execs talking about franchise fatigue.
Yeah.
IP Man, Ip Man wasn't a martial arts movie. It was a Hollywood agent fighting off original ideas.
I just got yeah, it took me a second.
That's good.
Yeah.
Like face huggers. Oh, get these
Yeah.
away from me. Oh, it's going to implant me with a great idea. It might pop out of my chest. Oh, my goodness. Oh, get it. IP Man, intellectual property man. It's,
Yeah.
those Ip Man. It's like, I think you got a spelling error there. Yeah, now I totally get it. It took
Yes.
me a while, but I got there.
It's a thinker.
It's a thinker. Of course, one more shameless plug to like, subscribe, and Jim.
Ring the bell. Where do they put the bell now?
Well,
It's
and once
disappeared
again, too late. Folks, thank you all DMG, thank you for coming by. Whoops.
Yeah.
Wrong one. That's what I'm. Whoop, not that one. Never mind. Technical. It's a live show, folks. Things are going to happen. DMG, thank you so much for coming by, and thank you for having me on your show the other night. Shashank, our man in Chennai, thank you for coming by. Cody Brockup from the Brockup side. Even while he's casting his next his next opus. Thanks for popping in. And who else? I
Jelly
believe
Duck.
I'm missing someone.
Jelly
Jelly Duck 100, Kuwait City, calling in. Thank you all so very, very much for coming by. And we'll be back on next week, probably. Good chance. Something else to talk about.
Sometime, yeah.